Today, homeschooling veteran and author Phyllis Wheeler and
And homeschooling mom, Sarah Boble. We're here to talk to you today about Take Back the Block by Chrystal Giles. I had to send my copy back to the library, but Phyllis has it right there. And stick around after we do our little review because we'll talk to Chrystal about the writing of her book as well. So Phyllis, can you give us a little summary about this book, Take Back the Block?
sure. And this is our young protagonist is named Wes. Uh, he's a black kid living in a black neighborhood where he is extremely comfortable and at home. It's his place, of course. So he's got a group of 5 friends. They do friend things, and but unfortunately, this group is starting to come apart because, well, one of them has had to move away, far away, and the reason is gentrification. Now, that is a concept that some people are not all that familiar with. So what that means is, so you've got a minority neighborhood that's actually in a pretty good location, not far from the city center or the main thoroughfares or something. And the property values have been low for a long time, but now they're going up. And so there's a lot of pressure on the homeowners there to sell and move out. And meanwhile, what's going to be built is something that actually replaces the neighborhood. Maybe, some stores, a condo, whatever. So it's a way that minority neighborhoods are being displaced and, well, basically shredded, I guess you might say. They're just not, no longer what they were. So in terms of community, I mean. So Wes's parents are trying to prevent this gentrification going on in his neighborhood, which is in North Carolina, by the way. And so they do a lot of protesting and they bring Wes along and he doesn't want to go. But then all of a sudden there's somebody who wants to buy Wes's house and wants them to leave. And Wes and family don't want to do it, but they may have no choice. So here is Wes's big dilemma. How can he and his friends put a stop to this somehow? What can they do? So there's the problem.
So do you think this is a story that kids would be interested in because they're not really familiar with that topic of gentrification? Most kids, if they live in the suburbs, it's like not even on their radar or their parents' radars, really.
Right. I think it's something that most people don't know about. So this is a very useful book, I think. We all want to learn to walk a mile in somebody else's shoes. So this book helps us do that and see what, in fact, we might even be on the opposite end of that. We might be somebody wanting to move into this condo that's being raised in a formerly black neighborhood. So we need to know.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like the main theme of the book is gentrification. Anything else that comes through strong?
Well, this kid Wes, he starts out being kind of a self-centered guy. He doesn't want to go to protests. He just wants to, talk about his clothing. He's a sharp dresser, and he's got a shoe collection of these, sneaker collection. So, yeah, he's pretty funny. So, but when the issue strikes home, he does he's pulled up short, like he doesn't want to lose his community, the people around him that he depends on, the guy across the street who's, helps him out or takes him takes him when his parents aren't home, or just stuff
Mhm.
like that. So he he it's a bit he does some growing up, and
Mhm.
uh, I won't spoil the book for you, but it's a big challenge for him and his
Okay.
friends.
So do you think the author does a good job of capturing what it feels like to be the main character, Wes?
I think so. Yeah, I guess yeah, the things he thinks about, and the his well, his altercations or whatever they want to call it with his some of his friends, and there's little conflicts going on, and uh, yeah, it's very much a middle school life, I think, and yeah, I could feel it.
Mhm. Any memorable scenes?
Well, there is one, but I don't want to give away
Oh yeah.
the plot, but it involves a drinking fountain.
Okay.
I'll just tell you that.
Yeah. Well, I remember that one too, so it is memorable for both of us. So
Very good.
how about overall likes and dislikes in the book?
Well, I really liked the these peaceful protests that the neighborhood people were doing, and the fact that they are in the long run at least somewhat effective. I
Mhm.
think that's good. It's a good look at the way democracy is intended to work, that we can speak our minds and be heard, and our local government might hear us. And
Mhm.
that's good. Yeah.
How about anything potentially controversial for homeschooling families, readers, parents?
Well, I personally didn't find anything. Yeah, there's nothing offensive. There's no bad language, or there's no violence. No,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah,
okay. Yeah.
great. How about any ways to engage kids about the topic?
Well,
What-
I, I think it would be interesting to explore who you might know who might be affected by gentrification.
Mhm.
Do you know people who live in the city or in a black neighborhood somewhere that is, well, the property values have gone up, and it's under threat. That's happening
Mhm.
everywhere that there are black communities, have historically black communities. So, uh, maybe somebody who's affected,
Mhm.
and it wouldn't necessarily have to be a black community. It could be, Chinatown, or I don't know. Yeah, I think the Chinatowns are under threat as well.
Yeah. Yeah, if people out there in our area, in the St. Louis area, there's that strip of University City. It's almost all minority owned businesses and a church. And it just, somebody told me, I guess I haven't confirmed, that the city, they've been going back and forth about tearing all those down and building a Costco. And there's been like all this resistance, and they've held out for years, and finally it came through. They're just forcing their hand. And so it's not quite like gentrification like in the book. It's not like there might be some homes affected too, but it's still kind of putting up like this monolith for the sake
Right.
of business and making money instead of maintaining the community that's already there.
Right.
So yeah,
Yes,
even
this ethnic area is going to be replaced by a Costco.
Costco, yeah. So
Not that I hate Costco or anything, but
right, yeah.
yeah.
So yes,
So,
so highly relevant book. I wouldn't call it like a Charlotte Mason living book on that level of writing, but it's I would still be happy for my kids to read it and read a kid's perspective on the topic, personally. So
great.
yeah.
Yes. So we're going to go talk to the author in a minute.
So we're back with Chrystal, the author of Take Back the Block, and we're gonna start asking her a few questions about the book itself and about writing. So take a listen. Phyllis,
Here's the book,
there
Take
it is.
Back the Block.
Awesome.
So, yes, so we're talking to homeschoolers, and we're interested in this topic of gentrification, which maybe not everybody knows about, right? So, I guess I'm curious about, let's see, first of all, why do you have a boy protagonist as opposed to a girl? The publishers like girls these days.
That's a great question. I think there are lots and lots of books with girls on the front. This story came to me though, with a little boy at the center. And that's the voice that really rang true to me as I was drafting it. I have a son, and so sometimes I think maybe that's the reason that the boy voice comes to me clear in my mind. I had actually drafted a picture book of this same nature, and I had a girl main character. So I can't say that I don't write books with girl main characters, but this book just came to me with a little boy in the center of it. So that's what I wrote.
So you were thinking of your son a lot, maybe when you were writing it. Is that what you said?
My son's younger than the protagonist. He's 5. So I
Oh.
don't know that I was thinking of him in particular. I do think I thought about this whole idea of activism and community work. And I thought about a young person being at the center of it, and maybe they didn't want to be at the center of it. I thought about like Wes's parents in the book, them dragging him to places that he just would rather be at home. And so for whatever reason, the boy voice came to me very clear in that circumstance. And I have to have a very clear voice before I start writing. And so that's the voice that came to me.
Awesome. So, what's your story about becoming a writer? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So I have a background in finance. It's what I went to school for, and it's what I've done for the bulk of my career. And I started writing for children when my son was born, and I loved books as a young person. I was an avid reader as a young person. And so I wanted him to have that same quality. So my husband and I gathered books for his library. And after we got the classics, I started to look for very particular books. I think I had an idea for exact books in my mind, what I thought I would go to the store and find. And unfortunately, I couldn't find that. I wanted books with little black boys at the center, and I wanted books that were hopeful and joyful or just whatever. And so I went to the library, and I went to the bookstore particularly for my husband's first Father's Day, and I came home with none of the books that I thought I would find. And so I think that pushed me to write. Generally, I just had this idea that I should be able to find the books that I want to read. And since I couldn't, I kind of went on this kind of random, ambitious path to write books for young people. And so it worked out with a lot of work, but it did work out.
So do you have any specific advice for somebody who's thinking maybe they want to write for children and they've never written before?
Sure. The first thing I say is, like me, plan out what the vision is. Like, what do you want to see in a book? You don't want to copy trends because trends come and go very quickly. And so if you're thinking of writing, really think about the voice in the particular thing you want to write about. I often say, write your passion, write the thing that only you can write. So in that, you have to find your voice to do it. And so that's one piece of advice. And then also the journey to becoming a published author. It's very long and it's not something you can predict. So you'll just have to keep going, even through the rejections, and there will likely be many. You'll just have to keep pushing through those things.
Okay. So in other words, be determined and don't give up. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Yes, yes,
Very good.
absolutely.
Okay. In this book, you have a story of a Black entrepreneur, a historical one named Mr. Pippin. And I'm just curious about where that came from. It's not historical, right? You made it up.
Right, it is fictional, yes. So when you look at, I guess two reasons. One, I wanted to highlight Black excellence. I think oftentimes we find that many of our Black heroes or inventors are erased. And so many times it's like, oh, this thing happened, or this thing was invented, or this music was invented, or whatever. And we find out later after research that it was a thing before and the whole history had been erased. And so we find like the whole hidden figures concept, it's something that I think has become more well known, that there are many, many hidden figures that we just simply don't know about. So part of it was that idea. Secondarily to that, when you look at what gentrification is and its roots and the historical ties to communities of color, I wanted to show the cycle and show that it's very cyclical in nature. And so lots of these communities that are in the inner city were at once integrated. And then over time, we had the whole generation of white flight, and white people in those communities fled to go to the suburbs. And so I think I will be doing the topic itself a disservice if I didn't at least incorporate some historical context into it. So both of those things came to mind when I decided to pull in this fictional character. And I thought it would also be a great tie-in for the school research project as well.
So do you have any particular personal relationship with gentrification?
So the book is kind of loosely based on my hometown. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, and it, like many cities, is experiencing gentrification. It's kind of rapid in my city, and so there's a whole lot of affordable housing crises and everything that comes with it. So I have not personally been kicked out of my home, but many of the places I frequented as a young person, completely different. The elementary school I went to is kind of right in the center of a transitional neighborhood where there's like $1 million homes, and then there's like lower income areas right around it. And that is really true for many of the places that I lived in or frequented as a young person. And so my city itself is kind of ravaged with it, and there's a huge economic divide. And I do not think that's unique to my city at all, but because I was born here and grew up here and still live here, I feel like I have a personal connection to the changes over time.
So there are neighborhoods that you personally remember as thriving that are now, turned into a Costco or something. Is that right?
Or more so like it used to be lower income or just kind of Black historical, and then now those are completely kind of culturally wiped away, and it's like condos or $1 million homes. So more from that perspective than like the huge shopping mall. It's more what I see and more the connection to that.
Right. So, yeah, I think this is happening everywhere because the real estate values are going up in, even in, I mean, the historically Black neighborhoods were typically in a pretty nice location. People are noticing that and they think, oh, I think I want to live there. So you have any?
Absolutely. And so some cities I think do better jobs than others. And my city has done some improvement lately. And so, you know, there are particular things you can do. You can absolutely specify that 30% or 40% of this area will stay income based or affordable housing, that kind of thing. I think if we look at it before the development and we really are conscious and thinking about the community and the residents around us, we say, okay, this area has not been a really high income area. We can't tear it down and make it $1 million+ homes. So we've got to at least make a percentage available for affordable housing or something of that nature. And so there are responsible ways to do it, but that is typically not the case, I would say.
So that's a good solution. Yeah, and our young protagonist came up with another solution in the book. So do you have any other ideas about fighting gentrification?
If I could solve the problem, right? I think there are many options and many things that can be done. I think every community is different for sure. I think every city in its size and, you know, cities that kind of grow up like New York, where you don't have a lot of space, are very different from southern cities that are kind of spaced out. So I think it's completely different based upon the city itself, the demographics. There's many things. I just think conversations have to be had, and we have to first recognize the problem and then be conscious in the decisions to solve it. So yeah, that's what I'd say. I don't know that I have a whole lot of solutions.
So what are you working on next? Is it also gentrification or is it something different?
Oh no, so this story right now is standalone, and so there is not a series in mind for it. I do have another contemporary middle grade novel coming out in the fall of 2022, and it's actually set in a rural town in North Carolina, so completely different
Okay.
environment, so to speak. So I'm in the editing phases of it, so there's not a whole lot that I can offer up in terms of pitch, but it'll be another story that kind of looks at culture and not so much race, but kind of the impact of the society and environment around. And so it also has some really fun music, and that protagonist learns some new skills and some new talent. So yeah, I'm in the editing phase of that story. So it's been fun to work on.
Oh, awesome.
I have one question about, so I think it seems like you were really careful about how you made your characters, like Wes's group of friends, even though they're all Black, they're all different. So I was wondering why you made the homeroom teacher a white person, like a white man.
So I thought about the neighborhood as a whole, and so this neighborhood, these kids grew up together, and so their families know each other, and so the characterization is kind of true to what I think the neighborhood is. The school itself, I think you can kind of tell it's transitioning a bit. And so it's kind of in the middle of a transition. And so one of the reasons that it's laid out the way it is because it's transitioning. The teacher, Mr. Baker, though, is from the area. And so he kind of speaks to growing up around the general town. But more specifically, I made him a white male because when I drafted this story in 2017, there was a lot of talk about allies and what that meant. You know, suddenly that wasn't a word people were afraid of. And so we got to talk about how to be an advocate and how to be an ally. And so I really wanted to show a teacher who did not have the exact same marginalizations as the characters, but could relate to and could use their knowledge to empower and not stand in the front and not take on the hero idea, but be an ally and push forward. And so I thought he was a good example of what it means to be an ally and not to be in the center. And so I hope that comes through. I hope people understand kind of his role in the story. I also think sometimes teachers can be so very supportive of students, and they can empower as well. So that was his role in the story. And a lot of teachers tend to relate to him. So I hope that he is a good example of what an ally is.
Yeah. I think it definitely came through. I just wanted to ask you so you could say it.
Thank you.
Awesome. Is there anything else you want to ask, Sarah?
Nope, I think we made a list before you came on.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you very much for your time, and blessings on your work for your next one. And
Thank you.
yeah, we wish you the best.
Thank you. Thank you for reading and inviting me. It's 3 months old today, so
Oh,
I know it's
little book birthday.
a happy day for Wes and the crew. So I hope people continue to find it, and young people will connect with it.
So if you're looking for a book to read on a topic that, a lot of our listeners are probably not that familiar with, go check out Take Back the Block by Chrystal Giles. Thank you, Chrystal, for hanging out with us. And see you next time from Bringing Up Book Lovers.
Bye.